even when you doubt yourself, if your faith is in God, you will see the fruit. You will always see the fruit.
Well, and the patience, and the faith to not know where it's going. I mean, even just I can feel your heart so much, Jacqueline, even as you're describing this.
I got to this place where, we're actively helping producers and filmmakers get connected with their audiences in the Christian community. And it's been such a blessing because ultimately you want to be able to impact the culture.
Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Kurt and Kristen Ludhart, your hosts and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's raised over $500 million and helped elect over 100 members of Congress, 15 governors, 15 U.S. senators, and 1 president. And now, in addition to helping political candidates get elected, we're helping your business get elected by answering this question. What if you could exponentially grow your business by tapping into a unique and engaged audience that we call Liberty Spenders? Now, Liberty Spenders are politically conservative or faith-based consumers, and they are looking to buy from businesses and brands that align with their values. If you want to learn more about how you too can benefit from this, you can get access to our new best-selling book for free at libertyspenders.com/free.
And our guest today is Jackelyn Iloff. I should have asked you, is Iloff the right way to say that?
That was perfect. Yeah, it's a
perfect.
mouthful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And she was introduced to us through our mutual friend, Dr. Jerry Pattengale, a previous guest.
The epic connector of all people.
Yes, he is. We like to call him he's like the Kevin Bacon of the religious community. We love him. And it was so great to be introduced to you. And I was preparing to introduce you to our audience. And it was difficult to reduce your accomplishments down to some bullet points, so we don't take half the episode talking about it. But here we go. Jacqueline is partner at Starlighter Films and Entertainment. But here's the cool stuff that Jacqueline's been able to do, and God's really blessed her with a lot of success. She won Television and Cable Drama Series of the Year at the Wilbur Awards in 2020. She was nominated for an Epiphany Prize for the Most Inspiring TV Program. She won a Movie Guide Award in 2019 for History Channel's Jesus, His Life. Her other projects include I Am All Girls, Walking with Herb, the 2016 Houston Ben-Hur film premiere event. She was a television producer for Channel 55 Wild About Houston for between 2000 and 2006. She's a senior advisor at Joel Osteen Ministries in Lakewood Church, which is a small church there in Houston.
That no one's heard of.
Yeah, just a couple hundred people.
We're respected.
Yeah. And a speaker and an author of a great book that I've been working through. I'm not done yet, called What If You Could? Find Faith in the Face of Fear. I've enjoyed it. In fact, I was just enjoying the chapter where you talk about fear can sometimes lead to the exact thing you're afraid of. And I thought, well, isn't that a life lesson right there? You could have written that chapter and called it complete, because it's so true in my life and yours. But I wanted to talk, what inspired you to write the book? I want to get into all the film stuff, but the book was interesting. So what inspired you to do that?
On both sides of my family, I have authors. Both my grandfathers were authors, and I felt like I needed to carry that legacy on. I've written, as part of my careers in politics and ministry and film, I do a lot of writing. And, I've just done a lot of things in my life, and that was kind of a personal challenge. And what I realized is that most people would be able to do great things if they weren't paralyzed by the fact that they're so fearful about, well, what if I fail? Well, what if you didn't? You put 100% of your beliefs into either your fears or your faith. And if you put your faith in what God has for you, then you can accomplish great things because, golly, what a great partner you have. Somebody who believes in you completely and has given you the tools and the wherewithal to be successful. Or you can put yourself in your own fears in the darkness and in an anxious state and never accomplish what God has called you to do. And so that was kind of my inspiration. What if you could? What if you could? What if you could do anything you wanted to do? What would you want to do? Well, why aren't you accomplishing that? I like cooking. I like art, being a painter. I'm never going to be a Picasso, but I have a lot of fun painting my little paintings, and I'm very, very satisfied with that skill set. I'm never going to be a Michelin chef, but my family loves my cooking. So why not? Why not explore the things that you love to do?
It's so true. And I've heard it said, many different ways, even how you were framing it, what if I fail? And it's like, yeah, so what? So what if you do? But I love, your flip on it, of course, which is, what if you don't? What if you are successful beyond your wildest dreams? What if this is exactly the thing that you are supposed to be doing with your life? And again, the things that scare us the most are usually the most worthwhile to go after.
Look at Elon Musk. He decided to go to Mars. Now, if he had listened to everybody that said, oh, you can't do that, why would you even consider being able to do that? He'd still be sitting somewhere in a garage, doing PayPal or whatever. But he decided to go to Mars, and he has created incredible technologies to be able to do that we can use here on Earth for a myriad of things, including being able to connect people in disasters. That's the what if you could. What if you could do anything you wanted to do? What would you do?
Mm-hmm.
I've always encouraged my kids, make good choices because you get good outcomes. And that's what faith is making good choices, believing in yourself, and more importantly, believing in the Word of God. Because when you read my book, it's grounded in Scripture. It's not just my opinion about, hey, believe in yourself. It's about what did God say about you? What did God tell you to do? What did God give you? The tools. What tools did God give you to be able to accomplish the things that you want to do? Because He told us we are creators. He lives in us. And if He lives in us, then we can accomplish anything we set our minds to do, because that's what He gave us. He gave us the mind of Christ.
Yeah, that same chapter about getting the thing you're afraid of, the illustration was from the book of Job, which is something I've read it many times, but this idea that Job was clearly so afraid that his kids were going to do bad stuff and he was going to lose, that he was offering sacrifices for them. I'd never thought of it that way, right? Is the idea that may be illustration of the fact that was his biggest fear. Then, of course, he gets it.
Right, because he attracted what he feared the most. Instead of putting his faith in God's blessings, because he was overly, abundantly blessed by God, he couldn't see the forest for the trees. And so he put his faith in his fears, and they came to pass. And then he had to go through all that trial to come out on the other end to realize that God is the author of all blessings.
Well, I think there's probably a connection between that and your very interesting collection of career paths, right? So, we connected a little bit because you started working in politics, and I could definitely do a long episode just having you talk about your time working on the Bush quail campaign in 1988. And that's also where you met your husband, which I was reading about. But then you went from that, and then you were in ministry, you're now in film. So how did all that evolve for you over time?
When I was in my 20s, living in California, going to school, I wanted to be a producer. I had lots of friends whose families were part of that industry, living in California. And that was the career path that I was going to take. I took public relations. And so I saw that as a path. And God had other plans for me. He had always, as part of my family legacy, we've always been very involved in politics one way or another. And so I thought, well, I would love to volunteer for a campaign. So I got involved in the campaign and the bug bit me. And so then I wanted to go to Washington, D.C., and a friend of mine opened the doors there, and I went to work for the RNC for the Reagan administration. And I did all the PR for the Reagan administration to the minority community press. So this was long before, we had technology like we have now. This was all done on a sheet of paper fortunately, a computer. I'm not that old, but we would print it, and we'd have to send it to the mail house, and the mail house would send it out to everybody. And we'd put it on the wires, and, my stories got picked up by various and sundry outlets across the country about what the administration was doing with the grassroots, the blacks, the Hispanics, the heritage groups, we called them, the Italians, the Irish, and all the rest. And so from there, I went to the Department of Transportation and worked with Elizabeth Dole, who I am so grateful to say that she's still a very good friend. She's a wonderful lady and a tremendous icon and hero to me. And I was in her public affairs office, and for 3 years, I did all of her political briefings. So anything that we had going in the 7 departments of transportation, which at the time included the Coast Guard, was under my tutelage. I got to brief her on it. And then, things moved on. The administration's changed, and I went to work for KPMG in their Mid-Atlantic PR office. And I worked with their coalition, their grassroots coalition. So I did a little bit of lobbying on tort reform. So all of that are kind of facets of the same Rubik's Cube. It's all PR and grassroots activation. Around that time I was working for KPMG, I had my first child, and my husband really wanted to come back to Houston. He wanted to be around family. He and I were the only ones in Washington at the time. And so I said, well, here I am relying on the Lord to save me. But again, he had other plans. I said, well, there are only 5 positions like mine in the country. I'm very established here. I really don't want to leave here, but if God has it for me in Houston, then he'll have that position available. Well, needless to say, God had that position available for me. I moved to Washington. I moved from Washington to Houston, and it was wonderful for about 2 years. And then they decided to leave Houston as their headquarters and go to Dallas because it was between Houston and Oklahoma, and so that they could more easily go back and forth because that and Louisiana and New Mexico were their southwest region. So I couldn't go to Dallas. I had just moved here, so I had to give up my position. And around 2000, I had my second child. And I became a stay-at-home mom. I had these 2 darling little girls and lots of homeroom mom duties to perform. And I became their soccer coach, their cheerleader coach, their whatever I could put my hands in. And then they got into middle school, and they didn't need me as much. And I was getting very involved in the local political scene. And Joel, my brother-in-law, Joel Osteen, tapped me on the shoulder. He said, why don't you come work for the ministry? We really need somebody with your skill set to do some things. And so I joined and became the public affairs person and a senior advisor, and just created Generation Hope Project, which was a volunteer arm of Nights of Hope. And if you guys have ever been to a Night of Hope, Joel used to do stadium events around the country. So we did about 5 stadium events before COVID took over, and the rest is history. But we were in Miami, Washington, D.C., New York City, Detroit, San Francisco, and we would bring people from around the world, literally, to volunteer for those 2 days before the stadium event. We would put them to work in organizations in the city. And again, God just opened every door. I would go in and talk to maybe a key pastor or a mayor or somebody that I'd known in that city. And we would put together these coalitions of organizations that needed help. And we'd deploy these 300 people into the city to do great things. We transformed dirt lots into playgrounds. We would feed 1,000 people in a concert in the Tenderloin, which, if you know San Francisco's Tenderloin, it's a heinous place, and it's even worse now. But at the time, it was pretty dark, and people were shooting up in the streets, and it was very, very sad. And we had a ministry there that helped us, and we fed 1,000 people. We gave food to the shelters. We washed the hands and feet of the homeless, and it was like that all over the country. So that was very fulfilling to me because I literally had to rely on God to open the door in every city that we went to. And the stories that came out of it were miracles. We had one gentleman who was a volunteer here he lives here in Houston and was a volunteer with us in Miami, where I think he had grown up there. He'd gone to school, and he was deployed to a school area where they were doing some work on a garden. And he saw this guy that he had gone to school with, and the guy had been a huge bully to him. And the guy came over and apologized to him, and they reconciled and forgave each other for, one forgave the other for the bullying. But I mean, we didn't organize that. We would have never known how to get those two people together, but God did. In the Bronx, in New York, we were at a church that had been converted from a synagogue, and we had a gentleman there with his wife who were celebrating their anniversary, and he had actually been converted to Christianity from Judaism. Well, it had been at that synagogue that he had done his bar mitzvah again. And, the pastor was just open armed with him, and they gave him a cake for their anniversary. But who would have thought to put that together? I mean, what a full circle of, God's redemption. I just love stories like that.
Jacqueline, is even, to get you to move, right? It's like you just gave just enough, right? Oh, I have this job for you, just enough to basically get you to move. And then it doesn't sound like soon after that. So I have to wonder, what were you thinking at that time? Did you doubt? Were you thinking, hey, what is this bait and switch going on here, right? I mean, that had to have been slightly jarring when you were counting on that to make you feel okay to move. What was that like when that shift happened?
It was, first of all, I have always relied on God to move my life because I don't tell anybody, I don't have the confidence of my own convictions. So I count on him to do the right thing, to take me to the right place. And believe me, I have no complaints. The adventures that I have been on, any one of those careers for anybody would have been, top of the mark. And he just keeps giving me glory to glory to glory. And I'm so very, very grateful. But it's also personally very challenging because, there were times in those places where I was very isolated. I'm a networker, but I'm very much a reserved person by nature. It's only because of my job that I'm so outgoing. So internally, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to be able to do this? Do I have the skill set? Do I have the stamina? Do I, all those things? And more importantly, there was a moment when I wasn't working and I was just a stay-at-home mom. And I really cried out to God in those moments where I thought, you have given me all of these things, and now you've got me all by myself cleaning a house. Lord, is this exactly what you wanted? And he said, just stay still. It's a season. This is where you need to be. And I did. I poured myself into my kids because that's where I believed he had me. And now they're grown women, and one of them is about to get married. And I see the fruit of all those seeds that I planted, and my husband as well. I mean, he's a great father, but I hear them give me back things that I've poured into them, and it's so rewarding, you know. So that's why I say, even when you doubt yourself, if your faith is in God, you will see the fruit. You will always see the fruit. If that's what's so wonderful about being a believer. You don't have to wear it on your sleeve. You have to wear it on your heart.
Well, and the patience, you know, and the faith to not know where it's going. I mean, even just I can feel your heart so much, Jacqueline, even as you're describing this, when you said, you know, I was just a stay-at-home mom. And isn't that true when you're thinking about what you've been doing out in a career? You know, that's the temptation. That's the lie, right? That's the lie that can be told to us, that now you're being relegated down to just a stay-at-home mom. And of course, what better thing can there be? And, you know, as I'm saying that, I'm, you know, saying that a little to myself, you know, because being a newer parent myself, you know, I feel that push-pull of priorities and where sometimes my heart is or longs to be, and trying to stay within his will. So I just think it's a beautiful testimony you just shared.
Well, thank you. And it's not just being a stay-at-home mom. It was the lack of connectivity with colleagues to be able to talk to people. I loved, you know, reading to my children. That was the highlight of my day. I loved being a stay-at-home mom, but personally, it was just very isolating. And, you know, you have the luxury of having a partner to work with. So even if you're staying at home, you know, you get to interact. My husband was away all day long, and sometimes even late into the evening, because he was focused on this new business that he had been drawn to Houston to do. So that was the part that was challenging to me, was the isolation. But being stay-at-home mom, and I'm not a great housekeeper. Let's just say it. I need serious help. I'm, you know, I think my mom taught me how to clean and iron and all of that, but it's just not my calling. I love to cook. I excel at that. I'm great at decorating, but I gotta help. I need help when it comes to cleaning the house. I have a lot of allergies.
It's definitely interesting, and you are right about, you know, this beauty that, you know, we won't take too much more time on this, because again, we so desperately want to talk about Starlighter and all those other things and projects you're involved in. But it just, the shift for us, like you said, of both working from home. We've worked together for as long as I can remember. Even when we weren't technically working for the same company, we were always working on projects together with campaigns, and so I don't really know any other way. And the beauty for us, you know, where the pandemic was such a difficult time for so many people, and for so many of our employees and their staff, again, feeling isolated, or maybe it, you know, they were forced to face some realities of some tensions within the relationships of who they were living with. Yeah, and what a beautiful blessing we had, because, you know, our daughter was born during that time, and with everything being so much slower, I got to just soak it all in. I didn't have any of that guilt of deciding. We were still able to run our business, and we were home. And so I'll be grateful for that, because again, it was such a challenging time for many people, and still for us as our business. I mean, we had to pivot and shift, but man, what a gift. What a gift that was, because of my ability to focus and really enjoy it. And for him too, because we were both home. So there was no missing anything that was happening early on. But anyway, great. I just thank you so much for sharing, and for the ladies, welcome. You know, listening, there's a lot of wisdom there to take home.
Well, thank you. So we want to talk about Starlighter. That's kind of the last chapter of how this all connects.
Yeah. It's a perfect segue. So how did you get to, it sounds like you got to because you wanted to be a producer early, and now you are. So how did that all come together?
Because God always gives you the desires of your heart, one way or another. You know, His timing is perfect. It might be a little late for you, but it's perfect for Him, and it ultimately becomes perfect for you. A friend of ours was doing movie promotions. And he came to us at Lakewood and said, here are $10,000 worth of tickets that you can give to your congregation to help us promote this movie. And I said, oh, great, not knowing what I was getting myself into. So he had bought tickets at a theater and given us those tickets. So we had to sort through the tickets, make sure that our congregation knew when they wanted to go. We became a ticket office for this movie.
Oh, I bet.
It was, we had volunteers. We had like a dozen volunteers sorting the tickets, putting them in envelopes, taking the orders. It was a lot. And oh my God, we can't do this. I said, Paul, we'd love to do this again, but just give us the tickets and they can go to the theater whenever they want. Can we do that? He said, sure. So the next time they came, they gave us the tickets. We distributed the tickets without the time constraints. It was easier, but it was still putting the tickets in envelopes, giving it to it was just a lot. So the next time he came, he said, no, just give them away. Just don't worry about, just give them away. So I found myself in the lobby saying, here, get your tickets for this movie, get your tickets. And I thought, I'm not doing this again. I'm not rocking tickets. I was very embarrassed. There has got
Speaking
to be
of being relegated down, what am I doing now? What is this?
I truly have a servant's heart because I will do anything. I'll stuff envelopes. I don't care. I'm not proud. That was just a low point. So I told him, I said, look, let's not do this anymore. Why don't I set up one of our auditoriums? We'll show the picture here. We'll give you feedback on what the audience thinks about the film. It'll be kind of like a marketing preview that you guys do anyway. And we'll just do it. He said, okay, great. That sounds great. So the studios all bought into it. The filmmakers loved it. And off to the races. 10 years later, here we are doing movie nights. And along the way, because I'm a connector, I know everybody. I can pick up the phone and call anybody within 2 phone calls. I started getting involved in consulting on scripts. And some scripts came to us. Jesus, his life, the History Channel was a project that they did with Joel as executive producer. And then my husband and I were also involved in it as producers. And one thing led to another. And that's how I got to this place where, we're actively helping producers and filmmakers get connected with their audiences in the Christian community. And it's been such a blessing because ultimately you want to be able to impact the culture. We're on a political show. The left does it with panache. The right has never quite got it. You have to influence the culture in order to be able to elect the officials that you want in office to affect your country, your state, your local community. So you can't take the politics out of girl. I'm still on a campaign to change the world. Now I'm doing it through film.
Yeah. Well, Kurt says that a lot, which is, helping people understand, and our realization of, the right politics, of course, are still important. We're still very involved, have those clients. But it's downstream, just like what you said, it's downstream. So you're not, you have to win, like you said, at the culture level, the hearts and minds of people. And otherwise you're fighting, how is it you put it? It's a battle of inches, and you're fighting so much over typically minor things. When really so much can be done putting that same amount of fervor, focus, effort, time on, again, culture and just speaking directly to people and helping them, see the light, and then the rest of it will follow. And so I couldn't agree with you more.
If you're taking your kids to church on Sunday and they're going to vacation Bible school and they're hearing all of these things, and then you bring them home and you put them in front of the TV and they're watching Nickelodeon and Disney, and those messages are not resonating with the messages that they're getting at church, it causes a dissonance in their minds. And that's where you as a parent have to step in and reinforce what you want. But when there isn't that reinforcement, who's going to win in that battle? The bright, shiny object. So we've got to provide, as Christian filmmakers, as community leaders, as political people in the greater sphere, we have to provide that same shiny, bright object to our kids on the conservative side that the liberals provide. And at least they have a fighting chance to come out of things with a conservative mindset. I am so grateful that my kids are very strong conservatives. I would be embarrassed to say otherwise, because I come from a long line of conservatives. I don't want to be the one breaking the chain, So, but it's because we have always fed into them our values, our conservative values, our Christian values, and they match. There's not a disconnect there.
Yeah, well, and I know it seems to me from the outside looking in, I'm not a Christian film industry expert, but that there's a sort of excitement building there because of some really good, high quality, shiny object level productions that have come out of that space in recent years, whether we're talking about The Chosen, which is, very faith centered, or a movie like Sound of Freedom, which is a little less like full on faith, but there's faith elements in it. And of course, it fits our sort of right of center space, or at least was marketed that way. Although the idea that, opposing child exploitation and kidnapping is a partisan issue seems a little ridiculous,
It's
but
not.
it has sort of become that.
I've done a lot of work in the human trafficking area with I'm All Girls, was a film about human trafficking. And personally, as part of an organization that did a 1,000-person march here in Houston, we had full Saturday morning coverage of the whole event. We had all the politicians come. It's not a partisan issue until you get to Hollywood. In Hollywood, it's a little weird. But that's because there's so much child exploitation there from the inception of the industry. And that's a very dark secret that they keep, sadly. So it'll be interesting to see how going forward it gets exposed through films like Sound of Freedom and others that are out there. But no, the Kingdom Story just has a great new film for the holidays. I would highly urge you all to go and take your families. It's such a cute movie. Best Christmas Pageant Ever by Dallas Jenkins and Andy Irwin at Kingdom. David is coming out on Amazon with The Wonder Project, which is the other Irwin brother. We have, the Kendricks are a staple for really strong Christian valued anchored movies. And there are new people coming out. I've been talking to some mainstream producers who want to get into the faith arena. Joel has a new movie he executive produced with some great people that's debuting on Netflix. And it's number one around the world. We want to make it number one here in the United States. It's the story of Mary, Mary, Mother of Christ. So there's some great stuff out there that has raised the bar. The Troy Duhans of the world who did God's Not Dead just recently came out this fall with the Joe Kennedy story. The guy that won the Supreme Court challenge for being able to pray on the football field. Average Joe. We had Joe Kennedy come by and talk to us at Lakewood for movie night. And what an amazing story. What courage it took. Talk about what if you could. What if you could take on the bureaucracy and win? It's just about, it all connects with my world.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. So many of these are exciting. The Best Christmas Pageant Ever is stock full of actors that I recognize. Pete Holmes, who I think is a hilarious comedian, is in it. And a couple of my favorite actress, one of my favorite actresses from West Wing. So, I mean, this is a real, amazing production with a spiritual lesson. The Average Joe preview is so fun. He kind of breaks the fourth wall when he's talking. And I thought, well, that's a creative way to tell a story that sounds to me like, is this really a movie? Like, is this about this court case? And that's, court cases aren't exactly riveting, but they tell the story so interesting.
Well, the writer is a young woman, Kathleen Katz, out of Louisiana. She's got some great things ahead of her. She did a phenomenal job on that film. And her dad's a good friend of ours. You mentioned South Coast Alliance. We have a little group of filmmakers that we get together every year and talk about what are we going to do next to elevate the industry. And we always do, we always focus on something that is very attainable. But when you get into a room with your peers and you realize that everybody else wants to do the same thing, it lifts all, a tide lifts all boats. So we're very proud of that little organization. We've been doing that for 8 years. And, we have all the major filmmakers, Angel Studios, The Wonder Project, Kingdom Story, Renaissance Picture, Communications, and I'm leaving one out here, sadly, Cindy Bond's organization. Cindy Bond did, I Can Only Imagine with the Irwins. And that was a huge success. So these folks in this room are the benchmark for all Christian films. They have proven that on a small budget, you can create big returns for your investors. And that's the name of the game. If you don't have a studio behind you, you need to have great people of faith investing in your product. And in this case, it's films. And these investors have seen a return on their money, so they've reinvested again. And that's the real beauty of being successful is, success attracts success. So we're doing great this year.
Yeah. Well, it leads me to our final couple of questions. And I think this is a perfect time to ask about the legacy you're trying to leave with the work you're doing today. What is it what legacy you're trying to leave?
Well, I kind of mentioned that a little bit. It's impact the culture. Your light shines brightest at home, but it also has to light the path for others to follow. And I may not be the brightest light, but I contribute to opening that path for others. And I like to think that I'm a mentor to a lot of people, especially young people, because I was there with very few people saying, "Atta girl, go for it." My parents were wonderful, spiritual, anchors in my life, but they were just regular people. They didn't have all these connections. If you wanted connections in construction, my dad was the guy to go to. And my mom, if you needed something medical, she was the gal to go to, but they had no connections in the entertainment world or in the political world. So it was God just leading me down the path that he wanted me to go. And I said, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to give people a quick opportunity to talk about something that's interesting them these days. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's something that you've been reading lately, but it's outside of the topic of our conversation. What's something that's had your interest?
Well, it goes back to the mentoring. I just see a great opportunity to pour back into kids, my experience, and give them the connectivity, introduce them to people that I know, if I have a Rolodex on my desk and I'm not actively connecting those people, just a bunch of, digits in my constant contact or cards
Right.
on my desk. So I feel a real calling to connect kids so that they can have their dreams come true. A really good friend of ours, my daughter's boyfriend, has a little business that he's started, and it's very unique. I guess that's redundant, but unique in that it allows athletes to put together their stats. And so fans, recruiters, people who follow high school football players, baseball players, basketball players, whatever, both female and male, can get this app and see what's going on with these kids. And it's a valuable tool to the athletes, but it's also a valuable tool to people who are recruiting athletes. And so that right now is my mission, is to connect him to the people I know here in Houston because we have a tremendous sports group of franchises that are here in every sports, and including the rodeo. So that's really my passion right now, is to see his business take off. I think he's a wonderful kid, and he's so smart, and this is such a unique place. But I do that for a lot of other kids as well that come across my path.
Yeah, well, and that's how a lot of us got our starts. It's you have the right relationship and the right introduction, and it helps you get even a little leg up, and so it's incredibly valuable and very powerful. Well, we may have to do this again because I still haven't quizzed you enough about Lee Atwater. We haven't gotten enough information yet about how I can eventually be a star in a movie, which would be a fun thing.
Absolutely.
But it's been so cool to talk to you, and I really appreciate you being willing to record for us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love doing this. You guys are a joy to talk with, and I'd love to talk to you more. So just give me a buzz. I'm always available.
Yeah.
I love it. I can tell you have this heart for connecting. Kurt is very similar in that way. And I just may sound sappy, but I just want to thank you for what you're doing because, again, as I shared, new parents here, I just feel everything you're describing, and this desire and trying to protect their sweet little minds, and making sure we're putting good things in, things that are pure and worthy. And so I know I've been on this path of learning, educating myself, finding alternatives for, education. I mean, they're so small. I mean, we limit screen time, but I'm really excited about this growth in this industry and this sector. And it's because people like you are paving that way. They're leading, they're using those connections to help build funding for it. And so I'm so excited by what's happening. And again, I just appreciate your work on it. So keep going.
Yes.
I
know you will, but it's amazing.
Oh, thank you very much. And I'll leave you with this thought. Read to your kids. Read paperback books or digital books to your kids when they're little. It's a great time to connect with them. And, it's a great time for them to use their imaginations as we read to them. And that was the best part of being a mom to me, was being able to sit there with them at night and just read them stories and really, animate that for them.
Oh, yeah. Well, my daughter, she now corrects me. I mean, she memorizes books so quickly. You just read it a couple of times. And if I just get one word off, no, Mom, it says this. And it's like, wow. I mean, anyway, I'm so impressed. But yes, I get what you're saying.
An editor in the making, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. She is. She is. But thank you. And anybody who wants to connect with Jacqueline or find her book, you can go to JackelynVieirailoff.com and learn more about her.
Yes. And for those tuning in, we so appreciate your time and attention. If you found value in this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything coming up. And again, we invite you to learn more. Join our Liberty Partnership community at libertyspenders.com. And again, you can get access to our free book at libertyspenders.com/free. Until next time.